Have you ever wondered what really happened during the final week of Jesus' life? We've all heard the stories, but the details, the emotions, and the significance can sometimes get lost. Today, we're going to walk through those last days, step by step, to understand the profound events that shaped history forever. This isn't just a story from 2,000 years ago, it's a journey of sacrifice, betrayal, and ultimate love that continues to resonate with billions of people around the world. So, let's dive into the final, pivotal week of Jesus Christ. Our story begins on what we now call Palm Sunday. Imagine the scene. Jerusalem is buzzing, overflowing with people who have come for the Passover festival. And then, a different kind of king arrives. Not on a war horse, but on a humble donkey, fulfilling an ancient prophecy. The crowds go wild. They lay their cloaks and palm branches on the road, shouting Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. It was a moment of triumph and celebration. For a brief instant, it seemed like everyone recognized him as the long-awaited Messiah. But this celebration was bittersweet, as Jesus knew what lay ahead in the very same city that was cheering his name. Following his entry into Jerusalem, Jesus went to the temple. But what he found there wasn't a house of prayer. It had been turned into a noisy, chaotic marketplace. People were exchanging money and selling animals for sacrifices, often at inflated prices. Seeing this, Jesus was filled with righteous anger. He began flipping over the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. He declared, "Is it not written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." This bold act was a direct challenge to the religious authorities. He wasn't just cleaning a building, he was making a powerful statement about true worship and purity of heart. This act, while popular with the common people, solidified the authorities' desire to get rid of him. The next few days were filled with tension and teaching. Jesus spent his time in the temple courts, engaging in debates with the religious leaders who were trying to trap him with his own words. They questioned his authority, his views on paying taxes to Caesar, and his teachings about the resurrection. In every exchange, Jesus responded with wisdom that left them speechless. He also shared powerful parables with the crowd, stories like the one about the wicked tenants or the wedding banquet. These weren't just simple tales, they were profound lessons about the kingdom of God, judgment, and the need for readiness. He also took time to privately teach his disciples on the Mount of Olives, foretelling the destruction of the temple and the signs of the end of the age, urging them to stay vigilant and faithful. As Passover approached, we come to one of the most intimate and poignant moments of the final week, the Last Supper. Jesus gathered his 12 disciples in an upper room to share this sacred meal. But this Passover was different. He took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you." Then he took a cup of wine, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." He was instituting a new tradition, a way for his followers to remember his sacrifice for all time. Yet, a shadow hung over this sacred moment. Jesus announced that one of them, one of the 12 seated at the table with him, would betray him. You can imagine the shock and confusion that filled the room as the disciples looked at each other, wondering who it could be. After the supper, Jesus led his closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, to a garden called Gethsemane to pray. The weight of what was about to happen was crushing him. He was in such anguish that his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. He prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." It's a moment of raw, human struggle, showing the depth of his sacrifice. He was fully human and fully divine, facing the terrifying reality of what was to come. While he prayed, his disciples, exhausted and overwhelmed, fell asleep. 3 times he came back and found them sleeping, highlighting his profound loneliness in this critical hour. The quiet of the garden was then shattered. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, arrived with a crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent by the chief priests and elders. To identify Jesus in the darkness, Judas had arranged a signal, a kiss. He walked up to Jesus and kissed him, A gesture of friendship turned into the ultimate act of betrayal. The guards seized Jesus. In the chaos, Peter drew his sword and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his ear. But Jesus immediately stopped him, healing the man's ear and saying, "Those who live by the sword will die by the sword." He showed grace even in the moment of his arrest, making it clear that his kingdom was not of this world and would not be defended with violence. Jesus was then taken to face a series of rushed, legal trials throughout the night. First, he was brought before Annas, and then Caiaphas, the high priest, where the Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council, had gathered. They were desperate to find a charge against him, bringing in false witnesses whose testimonies contradicted each other. Finally, Caiaphas asked him directly, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus replied, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." For them, this was blasphemy, the crime they needed. They condemned him to death. As dawn broke, they took him to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, because only the Romans had the authority to carry out an execution. Pilate questioned Jesus, but he could find no basis for a charge against him. He saw that the religious leaders had handed Jesus over out of envy. Trying to avoid responsibility, Pilate sent Jesus to Herod, who ruled Galilee, but Herod just mocked him and sent him back. Pilate then offered the crowd a choice: release Jesus, or release a notorious prisoner named Barabbas. To Pilate's astonishment, the crowd, incited by the chief priests, shouted for Barabbas to be released and for Jesus to be crucified. Pilate washed his hands in front of the crowd, a symbolic gesture to say he was innocent of this man's blood. But he gave in to their demands. Jesus was flogged, a brutal whipping that tore his flesh. The soldiers then mocked him, placing a crown of thorns on his head and a purple robe on his shoulders, hailing him as King of the Jews before leading him away to be crucified. Forced to carry his own cross, Jesus began the agonizing walk to Golgotha, the place of the skull. Weakened from the flogging, he stumbled, and the soldiers compelled a man from the crowd, Simon of Cyrene, to carry the cross for him. At around 9 in the morning, they nailed him to the cross between two criminals. Above his head, a sign read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." For hours, he hung there. The soldiers gambled for his clothes, and the onlookers jeered at him. He saved others, let him save himself. Yet, even in his agony, Jesus showed compassion, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." He promised paradise to one of the criminals crucified with him and, seeing his mother Mary, entrusted her to the care of his disciple John. Around noon, darkness covered the land until 3 in the afternoon. At that moment, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He was bearing the full weight of the world's sin, experiencing separation from his Father. Then, with his final breaths, he said, "It is finished, and Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." With that, he breathed his last. At that very moment, the temple curtain, which separated the holiest place from the rest of the temple, was torn into from top to bottom. The earth shook, and the rocks split. A Roman centurion, witnessing all this, declared, "Surely this man was the Son of God." The story, however, doesn't end there. Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council who was a secret follower of Jesus, bravely went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. He took the body down from the cross, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and laid it in his own new tomb, which had been cut out of the rock. A large stone was rolled in front of the entrance. The chief priests, remembering Jesus' prediction that he would rise after 3 days, went to Pilate and got permission to secure the tomb, placing a seal on the stone and posting a guard. They thought they had silenced him for good. But as we know, the darkest hour was just before the dawn. The end of this week was not an end, but the beginning of a new hope for all humanity. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the final days of Jesus. If this story touched you, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more content that explores the depths of history and faith. See you next time.